Hey everyone, this is Lisa and Nancy, and today we are sitting out on the summertime kitchen, out on the patio, right near waterfalls, or not waterfalls, but fountains. It feels like waterfalls, right, Nancy?
Yes.
We're in this beautiful garden surrounded by cottages and a Victorian mansion. We're at Magnolia-Plantation Bed and Breakfast in the historic district of Gainesville-Florida, and we're sitting with Cindy and Joe, the innkeepers and owners. And you guys have been here, I think, before we even started our magazine. 91?
Yeah, 1991.
1991. That's my year that I graduated high school. I should never have said that.
Yeah.
And then I broke my arm. Remember that story? But anyway, no.
Wow.
So yeah, but this is amazing. What led you to want to open a bed and breakfast?
I think I should tell this part. Okay. Well, back in 1989, we lived in a historic house in downtown Orlando. It was built about 1938. And we were both, working outside of the house. And Cindy had put a couple of trips together for us to go to Maine. And we stayed at our first bed and breakfast inn called Clefstone Manor in Bar Harbor, Maine. And we kind of fell in love with the people running it. And so the next year we took my mother and father back. And this was getting late 1980s. So in 1989, Cindy decided that, we had this nice historic home, and we were going to see what it'd be like to have people stay with us. So we signed up with a bed and breakfast reservation service.
Oh.
And they would book business travelers with us.
Oh.
And so, all kinds of travelers, business travelers, or people that were, didn't want to stay in a hotel. Because at that point in time, there really wasn't any bed and breakfast. Usually down in Orlando, everything was surrounding Disney World, timeshare, things like that. So she had our place booked. We had 2 little guest rooms. And I think we had a Methodist minister staying from South America for a few weeks, and then we had another business traveler. So typically, Cindy got home from work maybe about 15, 20 minutes before I did. So I come 20 minutes after she arrived, and she's sitting on our front doorstep with a suitcase in her hand. And I said, looking at us, what's going on?
Uh-oh.
She booked us out of our bedroom for 2 weeks. So we had no place to sleep. And so...
How big's your car at that point?
Yeah, it wasn't that big. Anyway, so rather than get upset about that, I said, I guess you're really serious about doing this bed and breakfast thing, aren't you? So we ended up spending 2 weeks in a house that friends of ours had moved out of to go to Charlotte, North Carolina. There was no furniture in it, so we slept on an air mattress for 2 weeks, a blow-up air mattress, in an empty house. And so from that point on, if I wanted a bed to sleep in of my own, we were going to have to get a bigger place. So we looked in Orlando, a few blocks away.
Don't mess with Cindy.
No, you don't mess with her at all.
Look at her face.
No, you never heard this.
We should be filming this.
You haven't heard the saying, render unto Cindy what is Cindy's? You don't know about that?
See,
I think it goes back to the Roman Empire. Anyway, so we look in Orlando, and it's just too expensive. And so we looked at other places in the state. So we're looking all over the place. And for about a couple of months. And so nothing really seemed like it was the right place or the right house. So we come to Gainesville, because, we started out here when I was in college back in the mid-'70s, got married here in 1977. And, Gainesville is a neat town, and we found years before, it had some beautiful historic neighborhoods like this with Victorian homes. So we find a house that is just a short distance north of here, 3 or 4 blocks. It's called the Richards House. And we go ahead and make arrangements to meet the college professor who's put it up for sale, and he was a University of Florida professor. So he meets us there, and we tour the house, and it's a sprawling Victorian, probably maybe built in the early 1890s. It had lots of possibilities, been some restoration work done to it. So we're looking at this house, and Cindy's, getting excited about it, and I see the possibilities. So we try for a period of several weeks after we met him to try to get a contract on the house. And he, for some reason, was putting us off. We didn't understand why. Well, while we were there was a young college student there And she was asking all kinds of questions about, when we were going to do this. Turns out the college student was the girlfriend of River Phoenix. And so she gets on the phone with River Phoenix shortly after he left, and River Phoenix says, okay, I'll talk to the owner, I'll buy the house so you don't have to move out. Well, long story short,
now that's a boyfriend.
Yeah, that's a really great boyfriend. Turns out that the house was for sale for the next 5 years. He didn't buy the house, and eventually we know what happened to River Phoenix and that relationship. So they ended up basically doing us a favor, because the historic preservation officer at the time directed us to this home, and it was not for sale. But in 1985, a really nice couple bought the house for restoration. They didn't complete the project, and they kind of lost interest in the project for many reasons. So 1990, we come along, find out it can be bought, and the realtor that had represented them back then, we got connected with her, and so we ended up buying this house and to do a bed and breakfast. And we thought this would be big enough for me to have a bed the rest of my life. But as recently as probably 5 or 6 years ago, Cindy ended up booked, the entire house was booked. We had someone living on the third floor in the room next to us, and we started a little project that took 2 months, and we were sleeping in all of our accommodations except it was graduation weekend. So we actually slept on those bricks for 2 days.
The kitchen.
Again, on inflatable air mattresses.
I know about those.
Right? And by luck of the draw, my mattress was the one with the leak on it, and after 2 hours it would deflate. So I actually slept on those bricks. So still don't have a bed, even though we have 22 beds here. But
in a mansion.
In the mansion.
And cottages.
And still, I was without a bed. So that's the reason why. So the whole thing is about having a place to sleep. That's why we did this.
Well,
not really, but
sadly, we're checking out in the morning. We've got a bed in there.
Yeah, right.
But
I'm used to sleeping on bricks anyway.
I know but this is such a unique property, and Cindy, yesterday you were showing that this is, we walked around this is like bed and breakfast avenue almost, but it's like a historic district, isn't it?
Right. It became the bed and breakfast district. We were the first, and then there's another bed and breakfast up on University, who's mostly does weddings. And then in '95, was it that Megan was working for us? We had a girl working for us, and so her parents became guests of ours, and we talked them into opening the inn next door. And then a few years after that, Joe's cousin came to spend their 25th wedding anniversary, and they liked it so much that they decided to look for a bed and breakfast, and we talked them into buying the one up the street. So there's 4 of us now within.
And you're obviously all working together when you hear this.
Yeah, we all work together.
But it's so beautiful now is that when this whole thing with having guests stay, and obviously you're really good at it. You guys are super hospitable and fun, and just.
Is it because we just keep you drunk?
We weren't that drunk.
We could try that.
Yeah, right.
You ain't seen nothing yet. No. It's those pepperoni little pizza bites. And that wine last night. You know what? Sitting outside and just it was
really lovely.
We just magical. And then we did walk the streets.
Welcome to Gainesville.
Yeah, right.
I know.
We can tell you what street to walk on if you didn't come stream, okay?
But anyway, the is part of it for you having was that a must? Like it needs to be a historic home?
I don't think I thought about it. I guess I just always assumed that a bed and breakfast would be a historic home.
Okay. Yeah. But we've done so many visits and stays at bed and breakfast this year. I think we're on like a roller coaster ride. Well, everybody, a big feature in Parks and Travel magazine. Check it out for the fall issue. And it's been really interesting because there's a lot of newer owners who are just getting started. There's a lot of, I'm going to say you guys have been in this, you're veterans, in this industry. And there's, you and Rosevine Inn in Texas, in Tyler, Texas. They've been in it for 40 years and built their bed and breakfast, but it's on a historic property too. But there is something to be able, that staying in it and keeping the renovations, and it's amazing because to me, and Nancy and I always talk about this, you guys are preserving an American story. You're preserving a story of a piece of property and people. But now this house, like seriously, it goes from lumber mill men who knows how to build an awesome mansion to hippies with LSD to now come stay here and kick Joe out of bed.
Yeah, right?
You'll have an awesome breakfast in the morning. You'll get wine and cookies and nice treats.
You know, they say that people and their dogs kind of match each other. Well, we're finding.
Wait, where's that?
Yeah.
Past that. There's an awesome dog here, too.
That the people and the bed and breakfast match each other. It's kind of like the land takes on your personality or part of, or part of the land's personality seeps into you guys. It seems that because every single bed and breakfast we've been to really reflects the owner, and that they each have their own personality. So it's
this
really
place,
different.
This place actually, when we talk about why the reasons why we did it, and we thought we wanted to have a 6-room inn was what we wanted. We bought the main house, and we thought that we'd be done. And the reason why, a couple things. The reason why we have all these cottages, we have 7 buildings now on an acre and a half, about 14,000 square feet of rotting timber, as I call it. Termite. We're termite deities. Actually, termites worship us. We're providing homes for all the termites. They're very busy. That crunching sound you hear, that's all. The cheering. They have little pictures of Cindy and I in their little termite holes, and they worship us.
Did they bring you wine? Little offerings of wine?
We are.
Angel wings.
Yeah,
Angel wings. Remember, we're termite deities is the official term. Okay.
Wait, is that what we had for breakfast? The butterfly eggs that were really termite eggs?
Yeah, they were specially seasoned. But what happened is that we got here and we were surrounded by again, you wouldn't have come down this street in 1990. You would have avoided this place. We were the first people to come here to restore a large home and live in it. Some people have restored homes for rental property and things like that, but we were the first people to actually come and live in one of these big homes and took a personal interest in the neighborhood, more so than you would be if you were just looking for income property.
Right.
So we were surrounded by, again, like I said, that kind of a hostile environment. The high echelon was college students, and then it went down from there. And
in Sugar Plum Cottage over here, the screen one?
Yeah.
We had, when we bought it, there was we kept trying to buy it. As soon as we got here, we wanted to buy that house. I love that house. And we sent him letters. We sent him a certified letter. We tried to get a hold of him. He never contacted us. We talked to one of the elderly ladies in the neighborhood and said, "Do you know this guy?" And she said, "Yeah, I play bingo with him every Tuesday night." And we said, "Well, he won't even respond to our request. We'd like to buy his house." And she said, "Yeah, he said that he would sell you his house over his dead body."
Oh.
And that's where we bought it.
And so which just
he
proves
died,
we're patient.
and his kids sold the house to us. So anyway,
Maybe the termites helped.
right. Well, he did have a wooden leg. This is not a good place for pirates, actually. If you're a pirate with a peg leg, your leg is gone by morning.
When we bought it, there was a drug dealer, a drunk, and a bicycle prostitute living in that house.
Yeah.
A bicycle.
Oh yeah, that's not what she did. She could cover more ground on a bicycle.
Wait a minute. I know truckers have lot lizards, but now there's bicycle.
Oh, but bicycle prostitutes. Yeah, we have them here in town. Yeah. Yeah.
Whoa. She would. Do they flick the red lights?
There's no such thing as a streetwalker in this town. We're a bicycle prostitute.
What's with all the scooters?
It's a prostitute.
Is that just all the universities?
Well, the students of the University of Florida, which has 60,000 students, when we got here, 30 years ago, there was not that many, but big number. But you try reasoning with drugged up, drunken college students at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, good luck.
And you go out there and say, "Listen, my guest can't sleep. Can you please take it inside?" Well, they told me things about my mother I never knew. Okay, every conversation was like that. So we ended up having to buy and displace.
That's funny.
So that's why we bought these houses. But one of the things we quickly found out that this wasn't about starting an inn. This project was a catalyst for redoing or rejuvenating this neighborhood.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is this is sweat equity.
Well, it's the impact of this, because it was like the hub, and this wheel, and we have we created what we call the Sucker Club. The Sucker Club is we've talked 18 families into moving into this neighborhood in the last 30 years.
And making it nice.
Sucker number 18 is right on the other side of that fence. That's Edie and Gerlach James. He was the head ER doctor at Winter Haven Hospital. She was the head ER nurse. So we have on-site medical now, which is good. because you go through that gate and you can take care. And the older we get, the more we need it ourselves.
So this is,
so you not only have a bed, you have a doctor.
We have
and
an
a nurse.
on-site doctor here and
Okay.
nurse.
So now tell everybody about this mansion. I mean, I want to go back to the actual building because you showed us like this Lego model of the mansion and Victorian. I always hear Victorian, like Queen Anne, and this is a lady pink or a pink lady, and I'm not that versed. But then you explained that this was really some smart building, especially way back in the day. This is the French one.
French Second Empire is the style of Victorian house it is. And the style became popular in France under the Second Empire of Napoleon. And at that time, the French government was taxing people on how many floors their house were below the eave. So a Second Empire house has a mansard roof on it, which looks like a roof.
Right.
But it's a whole living floor or living space because of how it's constructed. So the French figured out it was the first tax-dodging architecture created.
Cool.
So the French the tax collector
bigger than the secret doors.
Well, yeah. Well, the tax collector would come and he'd assess the house and he'd look at everything that was finished, and then as soon as he was gone, the people of the house would finish off their top floors in a full living space. So it's a tax dodging architecture. Yeah.
I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
That is very
is.
Now, I know you've got an engineering background, so
Right.
did that attract you to this? Going, no, that's some smart stuff.
No, what attracted me to this house as far as engineering goes, because when you buy an old house, the first thing you need to do is look at the structure, because you could spend $100,000 on restoring a house and never see any of it on the outside. I know people that bought houses that rebuilt the entire foundation. So I crawled underneath the house and looked at all the beams, and then also the third floor. There was no fire damage, there wasn't termite damage, there was no rot. And I looked at it, and it has the original roof on the house from 135 years ago, which is all hand-cut slate.
Wow.
And it weighs tons because it's rock. So the frame on that house it's built all with 4x4s at the corners. I mean, it's an incredible structure to support the weight of that roof. So I knew that structurally, you're not going to find a finer house in this town structurally. So you spend money to restore it on things that you can see and use, cosmetics and utilities, your air conditioning, your wiring, plumbing, painting, and stripping. Like Cindy stripped all of the woodwork in that house.
I was going to say she went stripping.
Well, she was
With or without a bicycle?
No, she does. Well, that's part of that. No, she was actually a Rhodes Scholar before this, and now she's a blonde because the chemical stripper basically took her everything out. So that's what happens.
This is great. Now,
This could be the last interview you ever hear from Joe.
but now, okay, so going back to this being built by a lumberman, right? So this area has lumber history. I mean, look at the trees. I mean, these trees are incredible. And the Spanish moss, there's like I was saying this morning, it's a magical, mystical vibe here. It's just, it's special. The house, were they using local lumber at that point?
Well, you know why Gainesville is here? Because, remember in the 19th century, most of the big cities and towns, on the eastern seaboard were on seaports or where the water was. There was nothing inland. And, we're 60, 70 miles from the Gulf and the Atlantic. So Gainesville would not have existed if it wasn't for the railroad. When the railroad was created in the early, 19th century, they finally figured out that shipping from the east coast of the United States to the Gulf, you had to go through the Keys, and if the hurricanes didn't take you out, pirates did. So when the railroad came, they would come to the port of Jacksonville, or Fernandina, actually. North of Jacksonville was a big seaport in Fernandina, and there was another seaport in Cedar Key. So they built a railroad connecting these two ports, and this was halfway between the two ports. And this area of North Florida had what they call longleaf pine.
Yeah.
And longleaf pine, which is almost non-existent today, was a great building material. This house is built out of all longleaf pine, the main house. And so they timbered all this timber that they were exporting timber. There's so much timber here. And so the reason why Gainesville continued to exist was timbering. And then when they cleared the forest, they found phosphates. And phosphates were used in detergents and fertilizers and all kinds of
Chemicals for stripping.
Stripping, yeah. They were ahead of the time. Actually,
Yes,
so basically, all this is the reason why that mansions were built in the center of the state. And Gainesville at that time was the largest inland city. Or, Orlando was like a backwater town when Gainesville was a big town back then.
And the name even kind of goes with that, right? It's like, we gained stuff. Yeah. And so, talking about the railroad, we went to the depot park. You told us to go there today, Cindy. And what I loved is they have where the rotunda, what do you call that? The big circular, all the railroad things have the big turnaround.
Roundhouse.
Yes. Thank you. That's
the rotunda.
Yes. Well,
that's where you get buried in Lion State.
No, because there's one in Santa Fe, the depot, the old depot. They took that and they did a big rose garden. Then what they did there with that big arbor out there, so it's all pretty with flowers and crepe myrtle, and so I thought that was cool. And then you go walk down, you got water, and there's public art around the corner, and restaurants, and I mean that whole area is
nice.
That is awesome. So do a lot of people come here to go there? Like trained people? Because I know trained people travel for train stuff.
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Well, you need to come train people.
Right.
Yeah,
that is
it's your time.
Well, they talked about getting an old locomotive and doing other things over the years. Was the depot is one of the largest depots, in this part in North Florida. It's a huge depot, because at one time there were like 4 sets of tracks. This was a big railroad hub, so from all over, and there was a large place called the Baird Center, which this Baird family, who our Baird Mansion is named after, had the largest hardware chain in the state of Florida around 1900. And there's a big hardware depot down there where the trains backed up to it across the street there, and so we're hoping, eventually that historical part, that would tie in with really.
Now the Baird Center now, it's called Heartwood Stage, and they do concerts.
Okay, cool.
Real intimate little concerts. And so we get a lot of people that are going to the concerts that come stay here, and then you can just walk down it. I call it, we're staggering distance from downtown or Depot Park.
Yeah, that's what I like about this, is you can just walk out. And you know what? It is so peaceful. Last night, honestly, it was just lights out. And I couldn't believe it. I woke up, because I wake up early and, I'm weird. Get up and then I'm like, it's quiet. Shh, don't tell anybody. But it's quiet. And I was like, no way. What happened?
We've worked really hard to keep it a quiet neighborhood.
It's
really hard.
It's quiet.
We have a texting phone tree thing where if anybody is being disturbed in the neighborhood, they call, and then somebody else will call the next person. And in this town, if you call the police, if 3 people call the police on any incident, the police are out here within minutes.
Well, noise incidents. So, they'll come right away, but they won't respond in a college town to noise complaints unless you got more than one.
That's why I like that you're a college town too, because of the energy. I think there's always something about a college town where there's this.
They do bring energy.
There's energy. There's learning. There's parties, obviously, but concerts. Okay, so music in October, you said, I don't know what it's going to be like for this year, but is a big deal because, hey, also this was Tom Petty land, and so that's put Gainesville on the map.
They have his big birthday bash in October, and all weekend long, every venue you go to, there's Tom Petty music.
That is awesome.
And then the stadium at the University of Florida, at the third quarter, before the fourth quarter starts, everybody stands up and sings Tom Petty's I Won't Back Down.
Oh,
yeah,
cool. That's awesome. That's awesome.
And night games are great because everybody's got their flashlights out, their flashlights. Yeah.
Well, we saw murals. You've got a lot of murals in town and public art and interesting bike racks. Cycling town for sure.
Yes,
but
definitely.
But there's the good cyclists, and then there's the business cycling, the ladies. But so you have to have a good bike rack to park your bike. But
she used the cemetery.
See, we need to go to the cemetery.
That way you don't have to worry about headboards banging against walls. Peaceful, quiet.
I see.
Find a nice grave to lay on.
Okay. Well, that's good. But anyway,
there's got to be ghosts here.
So public art is something that's growing here, and there's a Tom Petty Park, everyone. But so, do you know where his house is? Do you think? I saw where his swimming pool was, because there's Glen Springs. He mentions that in a song, and swimming there, and now that's taken away. That pool's gone. But
I
what did you tell him about the 1969?
Yeah.
Okay, you told him about that. Yeah.
Where he has no recollection of the year. The urban legend has it that when he formed Mudcrutch, he lived in the house next door to us, the big yellow house. And Benmont Tench, which is this keyboardist, has stayed with us in the past when they'd come to town for concerts or to visit family. And we asked him once, is it true that Tom Petty lived over at that house? And he said, I don't know, but I'm having dinner with him tonight. I'll ask him. And what was the year that it said Tom Petty lived in that house?
1969.
1969, okay. So he came back the next day, and I was talking to Benmont, and I said, did you have the opportunity to ask Tom if he did, in fact, live in that house in 1969? And Ben said, I did ask him, and his response was, I have no real recollection of 1969. So, who knows where he lived?
I don't know.
He did have a childhood
home. There was
home.
a rock house that he lived out, which was south of Archer Road on 13th Street, back in the woods there. And we had, back in the early 90s, we had some friends that lived in that house. And that was one of the places he allegedly lived at.
So there wasn't one particular house.
Yeah, there were several places that he lived. I mean,
Jim Morrison lived in Melbourne, Florida.
Yeah.
And I was reading his book, I think it was American Prayer, and I lived there, and I'm like, dude, he's around the corner. He was around the corner. Where was it? Where was it, man? Come on.
But then he was also in the House of the Dead Sea.
In Mexico, we actually think he lived in the place that he frequented. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But okay, so now you've got the lumber scene that happens here, and then how did the hippie movement move into? I mean, did Tom Petty bring them?
Well, it's interesting. Very possible Tom Petty was in this house back then, but the Bairds, the last Baird to live here was Hattie Baird. She was the youngest of their 8 children, and she was probably in her 70s or 80s when she passed away or left the house in 1958. And the Bairds retained ownership of the house until 1966. So when it came for sale, I think Hattie had been renting to college students back in the 50s.
Oh, okay.
And what they did is they closed off the staircase in the main. They blocked it off, and there was a rear staircase off the back of the house. They took windows out, and so people entered the house through 3 floors from the outside. And so she kept the first level to herself, private. So she was the last person, but that's basically when college students are living here. So the house, like many of these mansions, if they're not kept up, they become cheap rentals. Then you get slumlords that come in these neighborhoods. They just maximize the rent and don't do anything to the house. So very attractive to people that are hippies back then, because it was inexpensive, and there was
communal.
There was up to 25 people living in our home with 1 bathroom, which probably we've heard stories about that.
I bet.
From people that come in, and we've had people that lived in this house during that time come back.
Oh wow!
And
I have a
bring
notebook
stories.
that if anybody has ever lived in this house or partied in this house or lost their virginity in this house, we have them write their name, address.
They picked that up on you.
Or rode their bicycle.
I was just saying, you get a bicycle.
Well, it takes a very talented bicycle prostitute to navigate those stairs. I mean, it's amazing. 2 flights of stairs to the 3rd floor.
Talent. So I have a notebook, and they write their name, address, and I've had people who've lived here during, the same time, but lost touch, and they've connected by looking at my book.
Oh, that is crazy.
The virginity thing is, Joe and I were walking down the driveway one day. We were going for a walk, and a girl came up. It was around lunchtime. A girl came up, and she's starting to walk towards the front door, and I said, can I help you? And she said, no, I'm having lunch here. And I looked at Joe. We just finished a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, so I knew we didn't invite her to lunch. And she said, no, it's Magnolia. And I went, do you mean Magnolia Healing Arts? And she said, yes. And I went, oh, okay, let me tell you where that is. So we started telling her where that is, and she's still staring up at the house. And she said, and she pointed to one of the bedrooms, and she goes, when I was in college, I lost my virginity in that room. And Joe and I looked at each other and went, come on, let's go in. We'll take you for a tour. So we took her for a tour. And then I had another lady, her and her husband came, and the husband said, I used to party in this house, but don't tell my wife.
Oh.
We knew each other then, but she never came to any of the parties because there was huge parties here.
They did.
Well, yeah, this is like a crazy party house.
Yeah.
They did Rites of Spring.
I can imagine Jim Morrison partying here.
Oh yeah.
When we were restoring the house, there was like metal welded to the fireplace in the dining room. And so Joe yanked the metal off of it, and where the flue went, and as he was yanking it out, all these beer bottles and junk started coming out.
They would go on the roof,
They'd
and
go
they
up
would
party
put
on
all
the
their
roof.
bottles and cans and stack them
Into
up
the
on the
flue.
fireplace. And that's 3-story house.
Oh my God.
Full of so they would deposit all the stuff when they weren't throwing it on neighbors' lawns and put it in there.
So they just used the top of the roof to party, and then they'd use the flues at the top as a dumpster.
See, the way the house was set up, the first floor during parties was the beer and wine floor. Second floor was the hard liquor floor. The third floor was the drug floor, and then the fourth level, there was a mattress and box spring. So when you got your date through that, she thought she was in Valhalla or heaven or something. And with that room, we had to wear a bunny suit to get into the fourth level of the
That
tower.
mattress
It was awful.
was so disgusting.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I wouldn't touch it. I
No,
mean, we were digging through.
Ew.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, that's how it was set up. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So let's talk about the professor and the LSD.
So, okay, all right.
Is there a common theme of drugs and prostitution?
I don't know, but this is one hell of an interview for a bed and breakfast. I think you definitely get to be the first ones on this. Wow.
Okay, so anyway, 1972, there was a psychology graduate student who lived in the house with a bunch of hippie professors, I think. And they started what they call the Windsor School of Learning. So it was like the first homeschool thing for university professors, hippie professors. They didn't want to have their kids in regular school. So anyway, they did all kinds of stuff. So this gentleman...
That sounds really odd. I'm just
Yeah, well, I'm sure it was. So this guy basically ends up leaving Gainesville, and he gets his doctorate in psychology from Berkeley in California, and then becomes a psychology professor. And so back in the early 80s, and this was again 1972, he wrote a book called The Phoenix, Babblings of a Man Going Sane. And the book is about his LSD experimentation on the third floor of this house. And the cover of the book actually is the whole third floor. He's looking out through the tower and the dormers. He's sitting in this big room on the third floor, because at that time it was just 1,800 square feet of floor. And so he basically had a major, I don't know, hallucination. I don't know what happens with LSD, but he had trips that were
didn't jump
basically,
out the window.
and it was all, the house had such an influence on him. And he would, in this book, he describes how he's coming back from class at night, and the moon's over the tower, and the impact of the house, and so that combined with the LSD, I mean, it creates an interesting book. So you can still get it on Amazon. Basically, The Phoenix, Babblings of Man Going Sane, Babblings of Man Going
wow.
Sane.
So now let's talk about today. You've got these magical gardens and with winding pathways and fountains and flowers and trees and Spanish moss and little geckos running around, and it is. I love the gardens, and then so the house has got like the rooms. So let's talk about the experience of today. If people want to do LSD, they need to bring their own.
No, you have a natural high here. You don't need artificial chemicals.
It's true.
It's called paint thinner.
Yeah, paint thinner.
No,
Here
it's
she
not
goes. She's
natural about
again.
paint thinner.
No, that was. but no, for visitors coming here, so the house itself, the mansion, that's where the guest suites are, and those are beautiful. So you brought all this furniture in. I mean, this is all. It's got the integrity and the bones of the house, but it's all cleaned up now, people.
Yeah. We've made sure that it was period. We have the sinks have hot and cold running water. You can't mix it. It's a hot spigot and a cold. And we did clawfoot tubs, which I'm finding as I get older, it's a little difficult to get into one. But so you have to be a high stepper. And then I have one room that just has a walk-in shower. But they all have fireplaces, and they're all. We turn them on when the weather starts getting chilly, so people can use their gas log fireplaces, which is nice.
It is nice. So does it gets cold here?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm from Cleveland, and it's cold
It's
here.
a very damp, cold. When we've been up in North Carolina on a sunny day and it's 20 degrees, come back here, it's in the mid 40s, cloudy. and windy, and it's bone chilling when it gets cold
Wow.
here. Because we're in an area, because we're so far inland, we don't get the influence of the Gulf and the Atlantic to keep the nighttime air temperatures, warm.
But
So
everything's growing out here.
Oh yeah, we have deciduous trees. You have a little fall color because we're kind of in the south end of Zone 8, kind of a growing zone, Zone 9. So Jacksonville's actually in a warmer climate than we are because it's a coastal area. So the type of vegetation here is different than you find in a lot of places in Florida. It's not like what you find on the coast. We have a lot more hardwoods. The garden that there was nothing left of the original gardens when we got here, and so my father, who's a landscape architect and still practicing at 87 years of age down in Vero Beach.
Amazing.
Dad and I put
Beautiful
all the
area,
gardens in.
yeah.
So anyway, so he and I put all the gardens in together.
It's beautiful. Really. Yeah, I love it. To me, it's a huge part of it. So you've got rooms that are they're special. They're really, you go back to, they're very romantic, actually. Do you get a lot of couples?
Yes.
I would say. And then the cottages are super cool. We're staying in the cottage, and it's like, okay, you got your nice little kitchenette, which we treasure. We, when you're on the road full time, it's just like, okay, cool.
And especially now during COVID, people are a little bit afraid to eat out.
Yeah.
So the cottages have been very busy during this time.
I bet. They're beautiful, and they have nice little private areas. Last night we could sit outside, and that fabulous wine. What is that wine again?
Chateau Saint Michel Cabernet Sauvignon.
Oh, we enjoyed that. We
Yeah.
sat outside. It was just like perfect weather, and just
I know it's perfect, isn't it?
This is perfect. I mean, even just it's magical. So the cottages are awesome. But you're right about COVID and breakfast. Right where we're sitting, all the seating is outdoors. You can sit, wherever you want and be separated.
And then during this time also, some of the people have not even felt comfortable. In fact, I just started letting people come out here. What we've been doing is delivering breakfast to them and delivering their wine and snacks to them so that there's not a gathing.
Chocolate chip cookies that we have had kind of, there's one left. And we'll all keep looking at it.
I know.
Give it to Nancy.
Good one, Joe.
We keep looking at it, but no.
It's really yours.
No, it's what discussion we just had before.
You always listen to Cindy.
Render unto
You listen
Cindy's
to
what is
Cindy.
Cindy's. But that's a key tenet around here, survival.
And hey, listen, the gazebo is cool too. You got a gazebo.
Yep.
That's
Had a
cool.
lot of small weddings
I was
out
going to
there.
ask if you're doing that because we're seeing that as a kind of a newer thing this year. COVID is bringing a lot of elopements and intimate
Small
weddings here. So do you do that too? That's important.
Yeah, and if it's just the bride, the groom, their parents, and the minister, I'm like, just don't even tell me about it. I don't want to hear about it, and that way there's not going to be a fee for it.
Oh,
but if they want the chairs and the whole thing, then I have a small fee. But what we did during this time also is we said any students who missed their high school prom or their photos, graduation photos and stuff, or their engagement photos, we just let anybody who wanted to come over here and use the gardens to take pictures. As long as it didn't turn into a reception, they were welcome to come in and take pictures wherever we wanted.
Oh, because it's photogenic as heck, man. I mean, there's just, I could go crazy here. If I was just left alone for a day, it would be bad. You'd have like millions of videos and stuff going on. I mean, it's so beautiful. Yeah.
Well, like we talked about earlier, the garden is something that kind of draws you in, and the goal is, when we laid it out, was for people to be able to see or hear water, and because that whole thing was kind of drops people's stress level, because we're not on the coast, but we have water, so and that's important because a lot of people like to stay by water or hear water, and the big pond that's behind the house, is like we sit in the gazebo and listen to the waterfalls back there, and then we have the wall fountains, and we got the 4-tiered fountains, and we have Cindy's elephant garden fountain.
I love the elephant garden.
Lolly. His name is Lolly.
His name is Lolly.
Lolly
Lolly
Font.
Yeah. Now, so speaking it's olifant in Dutch.
Oh.
Yeah, in Afrikaans, in South Africa, it's the olifant.
Olifant.
Yeah. So now, speaking of olifants, what's the jolly gogging thing up there? Joggling board.
Joggling.
Okay, so the carriage house, that's got to be popular for weddings.
Yes.
That is above us. This is like, can I move in?
I tried to. It didn't work. Joe wouldn't let me.
We got to go in and test everything out. This was the last one we finished back in 2001. And so, when we'd like to test out and when we go,
He wants a bed.
well, yeah. Well, I mean, it was a nice bed. That's the best bed we have actually up there.
That bed cost more than my first car.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it did. But we wanted to, create a place incorporating everything that people like about the inn or staying at the bed and breakfast. So, there's a fireplace in the bathroom, big garden tub, like a big loft, beautiful bed. So, but we
The
we like
beds
to
swing
spend,
out on the porches.
I know. I'm like, I could sleep out there.
We spend one night to go ahead and see if everything's there. And it took 3 nights to get her out of there. I said, we can't afford to stay here. We need
Now he's kicking you out of the bed.
Yeah.
Oh, I see role reversal. But up on the patio, we've got this big wraparound deck. There's the
Juggling board.
Okay, so it's from Charleston, and any self-respecting home in Charleston has a joggling board. Yes.
Okay.
Well,
And
that means you didn't stay at a self-respecting home, did you? Did you wear the
I
joggling
haven't
board?
been
bring
to
your bicycle?
Charleston. I haven't been to Charleston, and maybe that's why. Maybe I need to go to
in the
finishing school.
in the 1700s, there was a woman who traveled from Scotland, and she moved to Charleston. And she wrote a letter back to her family and said, "This is a very dirty city, and I don't want to walk around. The only exercise I've been able to get is when I'm in my carriage and the seat is juggling me. That's my only exercise." So her family designed the seat that looks like a carriage seat, but it's just a board, and it's on a rocker. On each end of it has a little rocker, and you just sit on the board and you bounce and bounce and bounce.
It's fun. You guys should try it.
I'm scared that I'm like snap, crack.
No. As an engineer.
Yeah, I'd be the first person.
No, it is tested at 400 pounds.
Okay, wow. Wow. That's
And
amazing.
supposedly the other thing is when a family had a joggling board on their front porch, if a boy was courting a girl, they would have to sit at either end of the joggling board. And by the end of the evening, they will have joggled into the center. And at that point, the boy had either declared his intentions, or the father would come out and ask him to leave, because they had joggled together.
No more joggle for you.
Courting bench.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
6 feet apart.
That's right.
Well, no social distancing at that time.
No. That's pretty cool, man. That's awesome.
The UPS truck was not happy when he delivered it.
I bet that is like a monster.
It's 16 foot. Yeah.
And putting it up there must have been.
fun.
Yeah. Carrying it up those stairs was interesting. Yeah.
I'll bet.
That's when the wine comes in after.
Absolutely.
No. These fall down the stairs. You got to do that straight sober.
After.
Yeah, once it gets up there and you're through, then you
can
drink.
wine and joggle and joggle.
Joggle.
So, give everybody an overview of the dining scene. We haven't done that yet. We went out to Sweetwater wetlands, which everyone, if you come here, you must go. We saw alligators and herons and egrets and hingas and it was just, if you're a bird person, a nature person, if you come to Florida, you need to see a gator.
Yes.
Yeah. Period.
Exactly.
And it's like, when in Florida, you must.
But there's
So many parks.
I had somebody one time say, as they were going out to dinner, they said, "We're going out to dinner now." And I said, "Okay, bye. Have a good time. Where are you going?" And they said, "Oh, we passed an Olive Garden on the way." And I literally grabbed him by the back of the shirt and went, No. If you're at home and you want to go to dinner, go to the Olive Garden. That's fine. But when you're here, you go to a locally owned restaurant.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
almost all
Even
the
when you're
restaurants, almost all the restaurants downtown are locally ownned.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And what the city's done now is they've blocked off streets so that the restaurants can put their tables out in the street and so that they can have more capacity.
And you have in the rooms, everyone has, you've got maps, you've got here's where to eat, your places that you like.
Yeah.
So you recommend places that you've been to.
Oh, yeah.
And all. And you guys know you've been here since I graduated high school.
Oh boy, we're back to that.
Well, but no, I mean, look at it, it's magical.
Did you say you wanted some wine tonight?
Yes, I do. I never graduated high school.
There you go.
I never graduated. I just lied to Nancy. Actually, I'll tell you
She's actually my mother.
Sometimes. Please give everyone your website.
It's www.Magnolia, B as in boy, N as in Nancy, C as in boy, .com. So it's
BNB. Magnolia-BnB.com. It's Magnolia Plantation Bed and Breakfast. You've got to come here. It is magical.
And
Don't
it's
you think?
fun.
I know. Yeah, you got to come meet Cindy and Joe. And where's the puppy gone?
passed out.
Oh. Yeah, and she'll join you for dinner. I mean breakfast.
Yes, she will.
She will. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, go.
Oh, depending on the weekend, make sure you check with us. You might have to bring your own bed.
Oh, that's right. Or bring one for Joe.
No, I just think if your name is Joe, bring a sleeping bag.
And bring him a spare air mattress. He might need it. You might need it. Oh, and speaking of, locally owned, and you guys have all kinds of things to do here. But locally owned, one thing I do want to always say when we talk about authors, if you can buy the book directly from them, do so. No offense to Amazon, or go to an independent bookstore. When you choose lodging, if possible, please go directly through the bed and breakfast. It's better. It saves everyone money.
Yes.
So please do that. And if you need to make a refund, you'll actually be able to do it versus trying to do it through one of those. So I'm just going to say, everyone book directly. Go to Magnolia-BnB.com. Is that a good commercial?
Yeah, right. Excellent.
Thanks, guys.
Righty then.
Yeah, that was.